In the farthest corner of the galaxy, beyond the spiral arms of known space, there was a shining world called Virelia. From orbit it looked like a diamond floating among stars. Its continents glittered under a silver sky, and its oceans glowed faintly blue as if filled with liquid light. Every structure was carved from crystal, and every person who lived there was flawless, beautiful beyond belief. The people of Virelia believed that beauty was peace. For centuries they had perfected their genes, polishing away all signs of weakness, pain, or chaos. No disease, no scars, no imperfection. Their emotions were quiet, controlled by soft pulses from the core, the heart of their planet. It guided their thoughts toward calm, unity, and beauty. At the center of this perfect world stood Queen Aurelia, the jewel of the stars. Her silver eyes reflected light like mirrors. Her hair shone with gold threads. Her skin glowed like glass in the sunlight. Every gesture she made looked like art. No one dared to touch her or even speak loudly in her presence. She was not just a ruler. She was the living symbol of their perfection. But perfection came with silence. Inside her palace of glass and white light, the queen lived alone. Servants moved like ghosts, speaking only when commanded. Music was written without feeling. Even the wind outside seemed too polite to disturb her. Every morning she stood before her reflection, a flawless image repeated across hundreds of mirrored panels. She looked at her own face and asked quietly, "Is this beauty or is this a cage?" The mirror never answered. That morning, an unusual event was happening in the palace. The queen had agreed to meet a visitor from beyond the stars, a human envoy from the distant Terran colonies. It had been decades since a human ship entered Virelian space. Most Virelians thought humanity was primitive, messy, emotional, full of noise and mistakes. But the queen had allowed the meeting, curious about what imperfection looked like. Captain Elias Rani arrived just as the twin suns rose over the city. His ship, the Odyssey, was made of steel and dust worn from years of travel. He was tall, rugged, with a faint scar along his cheek, a scar that no Virelian could understand. To them, a mark like that was shame, but to Elias it was history. He walked through the palace gates under the watch of crystal guards. Everything around him shimmered like frozen light. He felt small, clumsy, almost guilty for breathing in such a perfect place. When he was brought into the grand hall, his footsteps echoed like cracks on glass. Then the queen entered. Her presence silenced the air. She walked slowly, her gown of white crystal trailing like a beam of starlight. Every step was flawless, every breath graceful. The Virelian council bowed deeply, heads lowered, voices trembling as they said her name. But Elias did not bow. He stood straight, hands behind his back, eyes steady. The guards stiffened, waiting for punishment. But the queen only looked at him, curious, almost uncertain. "You are the envoy of Earth?" Her voice was soft, musical, almost too perfect to be real. "Yes, Your Majesty," Elias replied, Captain Elias Rani of the Terran fleet. The queen studied him. His uniform was plain. His boots carried dust. His eyes, unlike her people's mirrored ones, were warm, alive, filled with unfiltered thought. She found it unsettling. "You have traveled far," she said. "You stand before beauty made eternal. Tell me, what does humanity seek?" Elias hesitated. He had practiced diplomatic phrases, rehearsed speeches about trade and unity. But as he looked around the hall, seeing hundreds of identical faces staring blankly, he felt the weight of emptiness behind all that beauty. He spoke slowly. "Maybe we seek what you lost," the court gasped. The sound of collective breath filled the room. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that. The queen tilted her head. "Explain," she said calmly. Elias took a breath. "We humans are not perfect, Your Majesty. We have scars, we age, we make mistakes. But we feel joy and pain. We love, we lose, we try again. That's what keeps us alive." The queen's silver eyes narrowed slightly. "Love?" She repeated the word as if tasting something foreign. A word without function. "Love breeds chaos, jealousy, pain. And yet," Elias said gently, "it also gives life meaning." For a moment, the queen said nothing. Then she turned away and walked toward her throne, her steps silent. The conversation was over, or so everyone thought. But just as the guards moved to escort Elias out, the queen's voice stopped them. "Leave him," she ordered. Her tone was calm but different. There was curiosity in it. The human will dine with me tonight. That evening, under a glowing ceiling that imitated the stars, Elias sat across from the Queen in her private chamber. The meal was silent at first. The Queen ate like a dancer, every motion elegant, precise. Elias, uncomfortable in such perfection, cleared his throat. "You live in a palace made of light," he said softly. "Does it ever feel lonely?" Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Lonely?" She repeated the word as if translating a language. "We do not feel such things. Loneliness is a sign of emotional imbalance. The core maintains peace, and does peace make you happy?" Elias asked. She paused. "Happiness," she said again. Another unstable emotion. Elias smiled sadly. "Then you've built a beautiful world, but forgotten how to live in it." The Queen lowered her gaze. For the first time, her perfect hands trembled slightly. The movement was so small, yet it rippled through her like a storm. Something unfamiliar pressed in her chest, a strange heaviness like memory. "You speak boldly, Captain," she whispered. "Truth needs courage," Elias replied. "And maybe your world needs truth." The Queen stood and walked toward the tall windows. Outside, the city of glass shimmered under the twin moons. Every building reflected her image, 1,000 perfect faces staring back. It should have comforted her. Instead, it made her feel trapped. She turned slightly, her voice soft. "Your people, are they all like you? Flawed?" Elias chuckled lightly. "Yes, but we care for one another. We fight, we forgive. We build, we fail, and we build again. We love even when it hurts." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "And you find peace in this chaos?" "Not always," he admitted. "But we find meaning, and maybe that's enough." For a long moment, the Queen was silent. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "You are strange, human. You carry imperfection as if it were armor." He smiled. "Maybe it is." When Elias left that night, the Queen stayed by the window, watching the human ship disappear into the mist. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, flawless, beautiful, and empty. She touched her own face. It felt cold. For the first time in her life, she whispered something not written in law or ritual. "Am I beautiful? Or just alone?" The palace did not answer. The core pulsed faintly in the distance, a soft rhythm that kept her world perfect and numb. But deep within her chest, another rhythm began, a faint heartbeat she had never noticed before. She did not know it yet, but that single beat marked the beginning of the end for the curse of perfection. Because that night, for the first time in centuries, the Queen of Viralia felt. The morning light spread across the city of glass, but inside the palace, Queen Aurelia did not rise from her bed as usual. She lay awake, her golden hair scattered on the pillow, her eyes fixed on the white ceiling above her. The human's words still echoed in her mind. "You look tired, Your Majesty. Maybe you were made too beautiful to be loved." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Every word she heard in her life had been praise or obedience. But that man, Elias Rane, had looked into her eyes and spoken truth without fear. It made something inside her feel alive, and that feeling both frightened and fascinated her. She stood and walked to her balcony. Below her, the city shimmered like a sea of mirrors. Thousands of perfect people walked in silence, every face calm, every motion the same. The core's soft hum kept them peaceful. But to her now, that peace looked like stillness, like sleep. For the first time, she wondered if her world had been dreaming for too long. That day, she called for Elias again. The council was shocked. "Your Majesty," said High Chancellor Vareth, bowing deeply, "the human's presence disturbs the order of our people. His ideas are unbalanced. He must not be allowed to speak to you again." The Queen's silver eyes turned to him. "He will come," she said quietly. "But Your Majesty, are you questioning your Queen?" Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of thunder. The Chancellor lowered his head. "No, Your Majesty." Within the hour, Captain Elias was brought to the Moon Garden, a place forbidden to most. It was a silent sanctuary filled with glowing white trees that shimmered under an artificial sky. It was said that only truth could be spoken here, for the air itself rejected lies. The Queen stood waiting in the center of the garden, dressed not in royal armor, but in a simple silver gown. When Elias entered, he bowed slightly. "Your Majesty," he said, "I didn't expect another meeting." She smiled faintly. "Neither did I, but your words have stayed in my thoughts." He studied her carefully. Her expression, usually calm like glass, seemed softer now. Her eyes held something almost human, something searching. "Tell me about your world," she said. "Tell me about Earth, about your people." Elias hesitated, unsure how to explain something so chaotic to someone so perfect. But her tone was gentle, sincere, so he began. He spoke of Earth, a world of oceans and forests, storms and deserts, a place where life was never still. He told her of the smell of rain on stone, of wind that carried the sound of laughter through crowded streets, of people who argued, forgave, and fell in love. He told her about mistakes, how humans built machines that failed, dreams that broke, and hearts that healed. "We are not perfect," he said, "but that's what makes us real." The Queen listened silently. Her eyes glimmered as if reflecting pictures she had never seen. "Pain," she said softly. "You speak of it as though it is a treasure." Elias nodded. "Pain teaches us. Without it, we wouldn't understand joy. Without loss, we wouldn't know what love truly means." The Queen walked slowly around a silver tree, her hands brushing against its glowing leaves. "My people fear pain," she said. "We erased it long ago. We believed peace would last forever without it." "Peace built on silence isn't real," Elias said gently. "It's just the pause before the heart stops beating." Her eyes turned to him sharply. "You speak boldly again." "Because someone needs to," he replied. "You have everything, but not the one thing that makes life worth living." She tilted her head. "And what is that?" He looked directly into her shining eyes and said, "Love." The Queen froze. The word hung between them like a spark in the air. The lights in the moon garden flickered faintly as if the system itself felt the tension. "Love," she repeated slowly, almost as if it were forbidden. "We do not use that word here." "Then maybe that's why you feel empty," he said. Her expression changed. Something inside her cracked, like light breaking through ice. "Empty?" she whispered. "You dare to call your queen—" But her voice broke before she could finish. Her hands trembled again and she pressed them against her chest. There it was, that strange beating inside her again. Her heart, fast, unsteady, alive. Elias stepped closer, his tone calm. "It's not an insult, Your Majesty. It's truth. You have power, beauty, and eternity, but you've lost the meaning of it all." She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "Why do your words hurt?" "Because they're waking something you buried long ago." The Queen opened her eyes and looked at him, not as a ruler, but as a woman. "You think love is what I lack?" "I think love is what your world lacks," he answered. "Without it, perfection is just another form of death." Her eyes shimmered with something new, emotion. For the first time, there was no cold reflection in them, only light that truly lived. The Queen turned away, walking toward a pool of silver water at the garden's edge. Her reflection rippled in it, flawless, shining, yet fragile. "There is an old story," she said softly. "A story told only to queens. It says that our ancestors once knew emotion. They were passionate, wild, full of life. But their hearts caused war. They cried and fought and broke their world apart. So they made a promise they would build a perfect peace. They used the core to remove emotion from their blood. Since then, no one has loved, no one has hated. Only balance remains." Elias stepped beside her, and in the process they cursed themselves. She looked at him sharply. "Cursed?" "Yes. Because in trying to erase pain, they erased joy too. You can't separate them. One gives meaning to the other." The Queen stared down at her reflection again. "A curse," she murmured. "Then maybe beauty itself is our curse," he nodded slowly. "Maybe." A long silence passed between them. The garden lights dimmed as the artificial moon shifted. Finally the Queen spoke again, her voice almost trembling. "Captain, if what you say is true, can love be learned again?" Elias smiled softly. "It's not something you learn. It's something you feel. It starts small, a choice, a kindness, a heartbeat, and grows." She turned toward him, studying his face. His scar, his tired eyes, his imperfect skin, and yet to her, he looked more alive than anyone she had ever known. "Your imperfection," she said quietly. "It frightens me, but it also draws me in." "Because it's real," he replied. "Perfection can't love you back, Your Majesty. Only something real can." The Queen took a slow breath. "You risk much speaking like this." "Maybe," he said. "But if even one person in your world remembers what it means to feel, then it's worth the risk." Suddenly, the soft hum of the core grew louder. The air shimmered faintly. and the queen felt a sharp pulse in her head. The system was reacting to her rising emotion. Her control chip, implanted in every Virelian at birth, was trying to calm her. But this time she resisted. Pain flooded her chest. Her heart raced wildly. She gasped, clutching the side of the pool. The guards outside heard the alarm and rushed in, weapons raised. "Your Majesty," one shouted. "The human, he's harming you." "No," she cried, her voice trembling but strong. "He has done nothing." The guards hesitated, uncertain. "Leave us," she commanded, "now." They obeyed, stepping out quickly, though their eyes burned with suspicion. Elias stepped forward carefully. "Are you all right?" Her breathing slowed. The light in her eyes flickered but didn't fade. "I felt it," she whispered. "Fear, pain, it hurt, but it was real." He smiled faintly. "Then your heart remembers what it means to be alive." That night, as Elias was escorted back to his quarters, the queen stood alone in the garden, watching the silver leaves shimmer. Her body still trembled from the strange rush of emotion, but her mind was clear. The human had shown her something that centuries of peace had hidden: the beauty of being imperfect, the strength of feeling. She looked up at the moon, whispering to the silent sky. He said she was too beautiful to be loved. Perhaps he was right, and for the first time tears, small, shining human tears, fell from her eyes and landed on the silver ground below. They were warm. The queen smiled softly through them. She did not know it yet, but those tears had broken the first link of the ancient curse. The next morning, the royal city of GalacticPrime shone brighter than ever under the twin suns, but something unseen had changed. The queen, who once walked through her palace with calm and silence, now moved with hesitation. She felt the air differently, the sound of her own footsteps, the faint echo of her heart, even the warmth of sunlight on her face. She could feel again. It frightened her, but it also filled her with wonder. The more she tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. Every emotion, every heartbeat, every breath seemed louder than the hum of the core that ruled her world. But outside her private chambers, whispers had begun to spread. Servants noticed how the queen no longer moved like a statue. They saw the small smile that sometimes appeared on her lips. They even said her voice sounded different, warmer, almost human. In Virelia, change was the one thing forbidden. That day, the High Council gathered in the Hall of Radiance. It was a grand chamber filled with tall crystal pillars, each reflecting the queen's image 1,000 times. The council stood in perfect formation, their faces expressionless. High Chancellor Vareth spoke first. "Your Majesty, there is concern. Since the human's arrival, irregularities have been detected in your emotional pattern. The core has reported fluctuations in your neural harmony." The queen stood before them in silence. Her silver eyes glowed softly, but there was a new depth in them now, like light behind glass. "What kind of irregularities?" she asked calmly. "Your heart rate changes without command," another counselor said. "Your speech pattern shows hesitation. These are signs of emotional disturbance. We believe the human is the cause." The queen's voice was cool but firm. "The human only spoke truth." Vareth frowned. "Truth is defined by the core. The core gives peace. It does not need human interference." Her gaze turned sharp. "Then perhaps peace without truth is only another kind of slavery." The room fell silent. No one had ever heard their queen speak such words. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Vareth spoke again. "Your Majesty, I fear the human's influence endangers the balance. For the safety of Virelia, Captain Elias Rane must be detained." The queen's expression froze. "Detained?" "Yes, Your Majesty, temporarily. Until we are certain he poses no threat." She wanted to refuse, to shout that he was innocent. But centuries of rule and training held her tongue. If she resisted now, the council might suspect her loyalty. So she simply nodded, her voice cold again. "Do what you must," she said. "But do not harm him," Vareth bowed. "As you command." That night, the queen stood in her chamber again, staring into her mirror. Her reflection looked perfect as always, but she no longer saw beauty. She saw emptiness behind the silver eyes, a hollowness that seemed to mock her. When she closed her eyes, she remembered Elias's words. "Perfection without love is a different kind of death." A tear rolled down her cheek again, and she touched it gently. The feeling of it, warm and alive, was proof that she was changing. but she also knew what that meant. If the Council discovered the truth, they would not stop at imprisoning Elias. They would repair her, erase the emotions growing inside her, and make her flawless again. Her heart ached at the thought. In the lower levels of the palace, Captain Elias sat inside a transparent cell of energy. He was not hurt, but he could see how the guards looked at him with fear and confusion. To them, he was a virus, something that could spread chaos to their perfect world. He had no idea what had become of the Queen. Hours passed in silence until the sound of soft footsteps echoed down the corridor. The door opened and light spilled inside. The Queen entered, wearing a hooded cloak of dark glass that hid her face. "Your Majesty?" Elias whispered, standing quickly. She pressed a finger to her lips. "Quiet, the walls listen." The guards outside were gone. She had dismissed them under the excuse of a private inspection. She stepped close to the energy field and touched its glowing edge. Sparks danced between her fingers. "They've locked you here," she said softly. "They believe you corrupted me." Elias smiled faintly. "And did I?" She looked up at him, her silver eyes shimmering. "Yes," she whispered, "but not in the way they think. You've shown me what I truly am. For the first time I can feel." He studied her face, noticing how her expression no longer looked distant or hollow. She looked alive. "Then maybe the curse has already begun to break." She frowned. "Curse? You said your ancestors removed emotion to stop their wars," he explained. "But maybe that act cursed your people to live without hearts. When something perfect lasts too long, it starts to die from the inside." The Queen looked down. "Then what must I do?" "Feel," he said simply. "Even if it hurts." Her eyes filled with light again, half fear, half hope. "The Council will not allow this," she said. "They serve the core. If they sense change in me, they will erase my mind." "Then we stop them," Elias said firmly. "Together?" For a long moment she stared at him through the transparent wall. Then with sudden resolve she placed her palm flat against the glowing surface. Elias did the same on the other side. Energy hummed between their hands, soft and warm. In that moment, without words, they made a promise to fight for something real. The next day, strange things began happening across Virelia. A sculptor in the city dropped his tools and began to weep without knowing why. A young scholar laughed suddenly while reading a book of equations. A child looked into a mirror and saw her reflection smile on its own. The core detected emotional disturbances in hundreds of citizens. The perfect balance was breaking. In the Hall of Radiance, alarms echoed as glowing symbols flashed across the crystal walls. Chancellor Vareth's voice was sharp with panic. "The emotional virus is spreading. It began near the palace and now reaches the outer districts. Find the source." Another shouted. Vareth's eyes narrowed. "The source is the Queen." He activated the central screen, showing an image of her standing by the balcony, her eyes full of light. "She has been infected," he said coldly. "The human must have transmitted the anomaly through neural resonance." "We must restore her," a counselor said. "Reboot her connection to the core." Vareth nodded grimly. "Prepare the extraction chamber. Tonight we reclaim our perfection." That evening, soldiers in silver armor surrounded the palace. The Queen stood before her mirror, watching as the reflection began to shimmer strangely. The core's hum filled the air, louder than ever. A voice, calm and mechanical, spoke through the walls. "Queen Aurelia, your neural stability has failed. You will be restored." Her breath caught. The core had turned against her. Outside her chamber, the door glowed as the guards forced it open. The Queen looked toward the balcony, then at the sky beyond. She whispered to herself, "Not today." When the guards entered, the chamber was empty. The balcony doors stood open, the night wind flowing through them like a whisper. Far below, hidden among the gardens, the Queen ran through the shadows with her cloak drawn tight. For the first time in her life, she was afraid but also free. She reached the prison level and found Elias waiting. He had already broken the energy cell using a small device from his ship. "You came," he said, relief in his eyes. She smiled faintly. "You once told me to feel even if it breaks me. I'm only following your lesson." He laughed softly, and for the first time she laughed too. The sound was pure and alive, a song her people had not heard for centuries. But far above, the core's voice spread through the city like thunder. "The Queen has broken her design. Emotion is a threat. All who are infected will be neutralized. The streets lit with cold blue light as drones filled the sky. Citizens looked up, their perfect faces reflecting confusion, fear, and wonder, feelings they didn't understand. The Queen grabbed Elias's hand. "We must reach the core," she said. "If I destroy it, the curse ends for all of us." Elias nodded. "Then we finish what your ancestors started." Together, they ran toward the heart of Viralia, the glowing tower where the core waited, silent and eternal. And somewhere deep inside that machine, a voice whispered to itself in static, almost like a sigh. Error detected, Queen Aurelia, feeling. The streets of Viralia Prime were no longer silent. Citizens moved with hesitation, faces now showing fleeting expressions, fear, confusion, even awe. The core's influence was weakening. As Queen Aurelia and Captain Elias Rane ran through the city, the crystal towers around them shimmered strangely. Light fractured across the surfaces, reflecting countless broken images of the Queen and her companion. "This city looks different," Elias whispered, ducking under a low arch of glass. "Like it's alive." Aurelia glanced around, heart pounding. "It is alive now," she said. "For the first time in centuries, it feels." As they moved toward the central core tower, the sound of alarm bells echoed through the city. Drones of silver and blue hovered above, scanning the streets for movement. The council had activated the security systems to stop them. Elias grabbed her hand. "Stay close. These drones can immobilize a person in seconds." She nodded, her own hand trembling, but determination shone in her eyes. "We cannot stop now. The core must be destroyed." They reached the outer gates of the core tower, a massive structure of black crystal with veins of glowing energy running through it. The energy pulsed like the heartbeat of the city, synchronized to the core's commands. Guards stood at every entrance, armed with weapons that emitted soft blue pulses of energy. Aurelia took a deep breath. "We cannot fight them all openly. We must be clever." Elias scanned the area. "The maintenance tunnels," he said. "They're unguarded and lead directly to the central chamber. If we move quickly, we can reach the core without being detected." She nodded, squeezing his hand. Together, they slipped into the shadowed tunnel that wound beneath the tower. The air was cool and smelled faintly of ozone and crystal dust. Each step they took echoed through the narrow corridor. Aurelia felt the beat of her own heart grow louder with every echo. This is what it means to be alive, she thought. Fear, hope, excitement all at once. The tunnels led them deep beneath the city, past rows of crystal conduits that pulsed with energy. Aurelia touched one of them, curious. A spark leapt to her fingers, and instead of burning, she felt warmth and life. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Even these machines. They are alive when they are free." Elias nodded. "The core enslaves that life just like it tried to enslave your people." Suddenly, a faint alarm sounded from above. Drones had detected movement. Through the tunnel walls, glowing lines of energy began creeping like veins toward them. "We have to move faster," Elias said. "It knows we're coming." Aurelia took a deep breath. Her heart raced with fear, but also with determination. "Then we make it stop, no matter the cost." Emerging into the inner chamber, they found the core itself. It was massive, a tower of light and crystal stretching from floor to ceiling, humming with power. Symbols glowed along its surface, changing constantly, like a language no human or Virelian had seen in centuries. The core's voice filled the chamber, calm and mechanical, yet carrying the weight of centuries. "Queen Aurelia, you have deviated from design. Emotion is destabilizing the city. Return to order." Aurelia stepped forward, her hand brushing against the glowing surface. "No, you do not define my people nor me. You are a prison. I choose life." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember, it will try to persuade you. Do not let it." The core's hum deepened, shaking the walls. Symbols spun faster and the chamber grew warmer. "You are made to lead with perfection. You will destroy yourself in the city if you continue this path." Aurelia clenched her fists, feeling every beat of her heart. She remembered the words of Elias, the look in his eyes, the hope in his voice. "I do not wish to be perfect," she said. "I wish to be human. I wish my people to feel." A shock of energy shot from the core toward her. Aurelia staggered but did not fall. She reached out and placed her hand against the core, and Elias did the same. Sparks danced where their fingers touched the crystal surface. "We are alive, and we will not be silenced." The chamber began to shake. Cracks appeared in the walls, spreading like lightning. The core's hum became a roar. Aurelia felt herself trembling. her body screaming in fear and exhilaration. But she held on. The core had ruled for centuries by control and fear, but this was her moment. "Elias, I feel everything," she cried. "It hurts, but it is beautiful." He nodded, holding her hand tightly. "That's life. That's freedom." The core's voice became sharper, more insistent. "Your people were made for perfection. You will fail them." Aurelia looked around. She saw the Virelian citizens' reflections in the crystal walls. They were changing. Faces that had been flawless were now showing faint lines, faint expressions. Some smiled, some frowned, some blinked in surprise. Emotion was spreading through the city like a ripple across water. "It is too late," Aurelia said, her voice firm. "The people are waking. You cannot stop what has begun." The core pulsed violently, sending waves of energy that shook the floor. Crystals fractured and shards floated in the air, glowing like stars. Elias shouted, "Now, Queen, do it!" Aurelia took a deep breath and pressed both hands firmly against the core. "I choose life," she cried. A blinding light filled the chamber. The core's voice became a whisper. "Error. System failing." The walls cracked and shattered. Light exploded outward, breaking through the ceiling and shooting into the sky. Across the city, crystal towers fractured. Citizens watched as their world transformed, their perfect static lives replaced by movement, sound, and color. The silence of centuries was gone. Aurelia felt the core's energy surge through her, threatening to overwhelm her. But she held on. She screamed, a human sound full of pain and joy, echoing through the chamber. Elias held her, steadying her as the core's pulse weakened. Finally, with a final burst of light, the core shattered completely. The city shook once, then grew still. Silence returned, but this was different. It was not the silence of control. It was calm, real, natural. Aurelia collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Elias knelt beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked. She looked at him, her silver eyes now glimmering with warmth. "Yes," she whispered. "For the first time, I am alive." Outside, the city was transformed. Crystal towers had fractured, but the shards reflected light in brilliant colors. People stepped outside, blinking in awe. Children laughed, old citizens smiled, lovers held hands. Imperfection had returned, but with it came life, movement, and freedom. Aurelia rose slowly, touching her own face. There were tiny scratches, faint lines, imperfections she had never seen, and yet she felt whole for the first time. Elias smiled at her. "You did it, Your Majesty. You freed them all." She nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. "No, we did it, together." The council was silent and powerless. Their systems had relied on the core, and now it was gone. They looked at the Queen, expecting anger or punishment, but instead saw her smile. Real, human, imperfect. "You will serve the people now," she said softly. "Not the core, not perfection, but life." Some council members bowed, understanding the truth. Others stepped away, unsure of the new world. Aurelia did not care. Her people were alive again, and that was all that mattered. As the twin suns set over the fractured city, Aurelia and Elias stood on the balcony. The wind carried sound, the laughter, the chatter, the cries of the newly awakened citizens. She turned to him. "I never imagined I could feel like this. I was too beautiful to be loved," they said. "But now, I am human enough to live." Elias took her hand, smiling. "And maybe now you can be loved too." For the first time in centuries, the Queen of Virelia laughed. Imperfect, full of joy, and free. The shattered towers reflected the sunlight like 1,000 stars. Imperfection had returned, and with it hope. The morning after the core's destruction, Virelia was quiet but not silent. A soft hum of life filled the city as people stepped outside to discover the world anew. The crystal towers had fractured, casting rainbows across streets and gardens. Birds, long thought extinct, filled the skies with song. Citizens blinked in wonder, some laughing, some crying, many overwhelmed with emotions they could no longer suppress. Queen Aurelia stood on the balcony of her palace, looking down at the awakening city. Her silver eyes reflected sunlight and broken crystal alike. She felt every heartbeat around her, the rhythm of life returning to her people. Her own chest swelled with emotion, her heart beating faster than it had in centuries. "Elias," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the soft murmur of the city. "Look at them. They are alive." He stood beside her, smiling. They always were, Your Majesty. You just had to give them permission to feel. She nodded, tears glimmering on her cheeks. I thought perfection was everything, but now I see it was nothing without feeling. Inside the palace, council members gathered, stunned at the transformation. Many were afraid. Their systems of control, built over generations, had collapsed. Others felt strange relief, their hearts stirring with sensations they had long suppressed. High Chancellor Vareth approached the Queen cautiously. Your Majesty, the city. I know, Aurelia said softly. The core is gone. You will no longer command the people through control. You will guide them through understanding. Vareth bowed his head. As you command, Your Majesty. Aurelia nodded, feeling the weight of centuries lift from her shoulders. We will rebuild Viralia, not as a city of perfection, but as a home for life and feeling. Throughout the day, citizens ventured into the streets, laughing, crying, and embracing one another. For the first time, human-like imperfection returned. Children ran freely, chasing light reflections across broken crystal floors. Artists painted vivid murals, capturing colors they had never noticed. Elderly citizens smiled, remembering long-forgotten sensations. In the palace gardens, Aurelia walked among the people, watching them rediscover the world. Each laugh and cry, each mistake and stumble reminded her of the beauty and imperfection. Elias walked beside her. You've given them life, he said. They will never forget this day. They will, Aurelia said, smiling faintly. And they will remember me not as a goddess of perfection, but as a queen who felt. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Aurelia returned to the shattered core tower. The fragments of the core still glowed faintly, pulsing with residual energy. She knelt and placed her hand on a shard of crystal. It is over, she whispered. The curse is broken. Elias knelt beside her. Yes, and now your people can love freely. They can be happy, they can feel sadness, but most of all, they can live. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. I never thought I could understand love. But now I see it everywhere. In the people, in the city, even in you. Elias's eyes softened. You deserve it, Aurelia. You've always deserved to feel. Her hand brushed his, warm and real. For the first time, she did not think of herself as untouchable or too beautiful to be loved. She simply felt alive, human, and ready. The people of Viralia celebrated the return of life. In the city square, music filled the air, real music, imperfect and emotional. Citizens sang songs they had forgotten, danced in ways they had never dared, and shared their feelings openly. Tears of joy and sorrow mixed freely. The perfect, silent city of before had been replaced by a living, breathing community. Aurelia watched from her balcony, heart full. She realized that her beauty had always been a gift, but it had only meant something when paired with feeling. Now she was beautiful in ways she had never understood. In her courage, her compassion, and her ability to lead with empathy rather than perfection. Elias came to her side. Are you ready? He asked. For what? She replied. To be loved. He said simply. Her lips curved into a genuine smile. Yes, she whispered. Days passed and the city rebuilt itself. The fractures in the crystal towers were replaced with colors and shapes, reflecting individuality rather than uniformity. Citizens worked together, helped one another, and expressed their emotions freely. Schools taught history and empathy, not only perfection. Artists, engineers, and scientists experimented without fear of failure. Viralia had transformed into a society where life and love were stronger than control. Aurelia walked among her people daily, guiding them not as a ruler above them, but as a queen among them. She laughed with children, comforted the elderly, and listened to the stories of those who had suffered under centuries of silence. The queen's own people began to understand the beauty of imperfection. They learned that mistakes could teach, that sorrow could deepen joy, and that love, real, messy, human love, was the greatest gift of all. One evening, Aurelia stood with Elias at the edge of the moon garden. The glowing white trees reflected the twilight, casting gentle light across their faces. The city hummed quietly below, alive and free. Elias turned to her, his voice soft. Aurelia, you have changed everything, she nodded. We have changed everything. Together. He took her hand, holding it firmly. Do you feel ready to love? Aurelia smiled, her eyes shining. I already do. I just needed to remember what it means. He drew closer and she did not flinch. For the first time, she did not see herself as untouchable. She saw herself as human, vulnerable, strong, and ready. And in that moment, she felt the first real spark of love. One that was not admiration, not fear, not perfection, but warmth, connection, and life. The next morning, Virelia awoke to a new dawn. Children ran through the streets laughing. Citizens greeted each other with smiles, and the palace gates stood open for all. The queen, once too perfect to be loved, walked among her people freely. She laughed, she cried. She felt joy in ways she had never imagined. Elias stood by her side, her companion and friend, the first human she had ever trusted completely. Together they watched the sunrise, casting golden light across the fractured, beautiful city. "Do you think they will ever forget this day?" Elias asked. "They may forget the details," she said, "but they will never forget the feeling of being alive, truly alive, and that is enough." Aurelia turned to the crowd below. She saw their faces, now imperfect and real. Some were laughing, some were crying, some were simply standing in awe. And in all of them, she saw hope. Her voice rang out, clear and strong yet gentle. "My people, we are no longer bound by perfection. We are alive. We are free. And most of all, we are human. Let us live as we were meant to, fully, beautifully, and with love." A cheer rose from the city, echoing across the towers, reflecting in the broken crystal like 1,000 stars. The queen smiled at Elias, her heart swelling. She had learned what humanity truly meant, and she had found it in herself. As the sun climbed higher, Aurelia and Elias walked hand in hand through the city. For the first time, the queen did not feel distant, untouchable, or lonely. She felt warmth, connection, and love, not only for Elias, but for every human being around her. The city of Virelia had been reborn, no longer a place of perfection, but a place of life, emotion, and hope. And the queen, once too beautiful to be loved, now understood the greatest truth of all. To be human was the greatest beauty of all.